Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from Maxed Out Man Podcast. This is episode number 14. We're here today with Dr. Eddie Capparucci, and we're very excited to have him on board. He is the creator of the inner child model for treating problematic sexual behaviors, and he's an author and a speaker, and also runs a Christian counseling center called Abundant Life Counseling there in Colorado. So thanks for coming on board. That's kind of the general, LinkedIn bio, but I'd love to hear more from you about what you do and what you've got going on.
Well, first of all, Kevin, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I always love talking to people for the first time, and the opportunity to kind of share with your guest. As you mentioned, yes, my wife and I, we have a counseling practice. We are located in Highlands, North Carolina, a little sleepy town that you're going to becomes also a tourist destination in about another week. So we'll go from a population of less than 1,000 to about 4,000 or 5,000. So it's just yes, but it's cool. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, yes, I specialize in the treatment of problematic sexual behaviors, and I am a big fan of and believer in the inner child. We each have an inner child who is haunted by things that have happened to us in our past, whether it be trauma or maybe neglect. And trauma doesn't have to always be big traumas. They can be little traumas that you went through. However, what it does, it creates a bunch of negative narratives in us, in our head, the way we see ourselves. And what happens is we get hit with negative events every day, numerous times a day. And those negative events, whether big or small, are going to start that cascade of negative thinking in us because, again, the inner child has been activated. So what I teach my men to do, and I work exclusively with men, is how to, one, identify the inner child, two, know what activates them. And remember, it doesn't always have to be just from a problematic sexual standpoint. It could be, let's say you have an anger issue, right? You could figure out what that's about. Let's say you have a emotional intimacy issue and you can't really be vulnerable with people. You can figure that out. What if you tend to withdraw from others? You can figure that out. Or maybe you have a different type of addiction that's going on. So there's so many different things that we could do with this inner child to figure out, and it answers the big question, why? Why do I think, feel, and do the things I do? That is my goal with every client that I work with. I want them to be able to build up that self-reflection muscle and make it so strong that they are constantly utilizing it for the rest of their life to always figure out again, why do I have these thoughts? Why am I dealing with these emotions? And why am I acting the way I am? Because I believe once you have the answer to those questions, you are now empowered to make real changes in your life.
That's awesome. Is this something, obviously outside of a counseling environment, is this something that like your average guy can kind of begin the process outside of that? I assume you have a book that, and different resources that can be provided.
Right. Yes, I have several books.
How would someone kind of get started kind of walking down that road just on their own? And then obviously we want, professional assistance when needed and that.
Yeah, it's always good to work through it with someone. It doesn't always have to be a counselor. It could be a coach. It could be your wife. Okay, it could be a really good friend that you feel very connected with. And in the book, Going Deeper, How the Inner Child Impacts Your Sexual Addiction. And like I said, you could take out the word sexual. It actually take out the word addiction. It could be depression, anxiety, whatever it may be, food problem, you have to first and foremost identify, okay, what kid do I resonate with? I've identified 9 inner children, and actually
Wow.
found 2 more, which are going to be in the second edition of the book that will come out later in the fall. So I'm going to have 11 inner children. I don't know why I keep landing on an odd number, but that's what happens. The first and foremost, we want to identify which one do we resonate with the most. And then with each inner child, which are all based on emotional pain points. For example, the unaffirmed child, the unnoticed child, the early sexually stimulated or abused child, stress, need for control. So those are just some of them that I have. The enmeshed child, the spiritually wounded, there are 2 new ones that will be coming in. As you can see, they all deal with emotional pain points that are still haunting us today, but we're just oblivious to that. So first and
Yeah.
foremost, what we do, we identify which of these kids do I resonate with. But then the most important part of the whole process is with each child, there are a bunch of unique types of core emotional triggers. So what we
Right.
want to do is figure out what are those core emotional triggers that activate the child. So that's what we're really looking for.
Okay. Would you mind walking through? I mean, you don't have to go into detail, but I'm interested if you could just cover, if we're not giving away trade secrets or anything, and people can get more
No.
detail in the resources. But you said whether you want to give the other 2 away, but I'd love to just kind of go through, because it may resonate with some guys if you kind of walk through sort of the 9 that you've worked with,
Oh
or
yeah, we
all
could
of them
definitely.
if you want to. I'd love to give the detail on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do that. So let's start off with the first one. The first one is the unnoticed child. Okay, now these are kids who grew up and people were not chasing them. Okay, they were the ones who were not, picked for team. They're the last person ever picked for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so therefore, what comes with that is this sense of, I'm just, not really desired. I'm not really wanted. I don't really belong. So therefore, they seek out additional attention from others to satisfy their emotional desire. The bored child was raised in in an environment that offered very little in the way of positive interaction with family members. And so therefore they often felt very isolated and alone. Nobody really challenged them on how to explore life because they didn't have
Mm.
that personal interaction. So what happens, they grow up learning how to entertain themselves. They spend a lot of time in their own head. And so
Okay.
therefore what they'll do is they're going to try to seek out some level of stimulation through behaviors that sometimes could wind up becoming addictive, such as gaming, sex. They will go into things like sniffing glue, cutting,
Mm.
food, too much food, things like that, because they're just looking for some sort of way to feel. The unaffirmed
Interesting.
child, they grew up with the idea of receiving one, way too much criticism, or very little in the way of praise. Or in some circumstances, it could be the person who received a lot of praise growing up for their performance, okay, whether academic or athletic or even their appearance. And then what
Okay.
happens is one day the spotlight goes out and they're not getting that any longer, but yet they still crave it. So therefore, again, for them, their quest is to seek this affirmation, because what's happening without it, they have this low sense of self-worth.
Okay.
Another child is the emotionally voided child. Now, these are the kids who have a very difficult time emotionally bonding with other people. And they receive the message very early in life that, you know what, feelings are not important. And perhaps it's harmful to share your emotions with other people. So therefore, they struggle. in learning how to connect with other people. The entitled child is not what you think it is. It's not entitled because, oh, I'm special and I'm better than everybody else. The entitled child here is somebody who grew up feeling devalued to have a kid or have a teenager. They felt like they lacked a voice. Their desires and their needs didn't matter. And then as they develop, what they realize is, oh, you know what? I can turn to something else for a reward. Like maybe they do, maybe they come across porn. And like, yes, I deserve to watch this because of that. Now, the thing to remember about these kids, Kevin, is that, they are still very active in our lives today. So the things that they're starting to develop, these coping strategies, such as I deserve these things I'm not supposed to be doing, things that are supposed to be taboo, they're still doing it today. So then there's the weak, inferior child. And again, they were conditioned to feel that way by their parents, siblings, or perhaps their peers. So therefore, what they're going to do is they're going to use things such as sex to try to either one, empower themselves by one being more dominant that way, or they're going to reinforce the sense of weakness by being more submissive. The stressed child, well, they grew up in a very anxious environment. Um, but what may actually happen with these kids, because kids don't want to sit and deal with all this anxiety. It's not good. What's going to do eventually is going to turn to depression. So what they do is they just start to cut that away. They start cutting it out and not thinking about it. And so therefore what happens, they may actually become desensitized to the fact that they have anxiety, even though it's still there. So what happens here with the stressed child is that they will use things to help to soothe themselves when their anxiety is so high. So therefore, again, the person who uses sex as a stress buster, which is not what it's supposed to be used as. And then we have three more. One is the sexually stimulated or abused child. So therefore they stumbled across sex at an early age, whether it be pornography or perhaps seeing parents or older siblings engaging in sex. The the enmeshed child is someone who pretty much gives up or relinquishes how they feel, what their desires are, what they want in life for someone else, and it's usually a parent. So therefore, they don't even. If mom's happy, I can be happy. I can't be sad if mom's happy because I'm going to bring her down. And if mom's not happy, if your mom's feeling bad, angry, sad, I better not be happy because she's not going to like that. She's going to wonder what's wrong with you. So I have to almost mimic the what my mother or father or whoever it is doing. I have to mimic that emotion. And then finally, the last one is the spiritually wounded child, and they were raised in an environment where the religious norms were so strict that what happens is it alters the way they would develop their own personality because I have to adhere to all the rules that are here, and therefore I have no liberties. I have no sense of what is right or wrong for me. I have to abide by these rules. So that gives you a sense of the 11 kids.
Yeah, that's it's funny because as you listen, I'm sure as everybody else is listening too, you kind of are waiting and listening for the triggers like, oh, well, that could be me. Those are some things that I dealt with as a kid. Now, do you find that would someone kind of have multiple facets involved, or is it typically kind of, one dominant one and maybe one, undominant one or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, people most often have more than one. In fact, the average is anywhere between four and six. But you're
Okay.
also correct in the fact that is there are there one or two that are the primary drivers? Yes, that's probably also the case. And there's many people who have 9. All they have,
Wow.
and soon it'll be all 11. But see, what's more important than picking the kids is understanding what are the core emotional triggers that drive the kid to become active. That's what we really want to understand and know. So therefore, let's say you picked and you have 5 kids. What you're going to do is then look, and in the book, at the end of every chapter, there's a list of core emotional triggers for each and every one. And what you do is you go in, you say, which one of these sting the most? Okay, like for example, for the unnoticed child, you may have, I don't belong. I feel invisible. Okay, I don't matter. And there's
Mm-hmm.
several others. Which ones of those you go, ouch? And for some people, it'll be the idea like I'm invisible. And for others, it'll be I don't belong. And some people may pick more than just one. So therefore, that's what we're looking for, because those are the things we have to be alert for when negative events happen in our lives, to be able to say, okay, based on what just happened, had my kid been activated? Well, I will know that based on what I'm feeling at the moment. And then I could go take the steps to wind up soothing the kid before he leads me to run off to do something that's destructive.
So it's a matter of understanding the triggers. Then, there's kind of this phrase that is used, which is taking your thoughts captive. Like that's a
Yes.
biblical phrase. And is it kind of like, okay, so you know your triggers, you're recognizing that, you realize that these things are kind of creeping up, and then you take control, you take those thoughts captive and then deal with them at that level.
Well, there's just a little bit more to it than that. Because what we want to do is, first and foremost, people who deal with addictions, any type of addiction, okay, one of the major problems they have is they can't sit and process emotional pain. They were never taught how to do it. So therefore, at a young age, okay, of a child, you're dealing with this emotional discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what am I going to do with it? Because there's nobody here to really guide me with it, because they're too busy or they don't care or whatever. So I don't have a lot of worldly experiences to draw upon. And I'm more emotionally based in my thinking than I am cognitively based. So I come up with one solution, and it's an amazing solution for a child. I won't think about it. I'm not going to think about it. Well, how do you not think about it? I have to distract myself.
Right.
Too much food, too much television, too much video game, too much with the cell phone now. I mean, and that's what they do, and it becomes their go-to. And their go-to. What that does in doing that, what you're doing is you're activating the reward system in the brain. And what that does is that produces an abundance of dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
Dopamine brings pleasure. Not that dopamine is a pleasure uh, hormone. It's a pleasure enhancing hormone, because it lights up the reward system. And if you light up that reward system often enough over a period of time, it then becomes an addiction, because
Right.
I need that. So therefore, we have many people. In fact, I was talking to a client earlier today who was going through a lot of just talking to me about what he'd been learning and stuff. And what he said was, he goes, you know what? I'm learning now how to soothe myself and how to regulate my emotional pain in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to running off and looking at porn.
And do we look for? Do you recommend people looking for alternative behaviors, or is it more of a thought process? One of the things that I do is these cold plunges, and there's a fair amount of evidence to show that the dopamine, the doing cold plunges and cold therapy actually stimulates the dopamine and norepinephrine in your brain. So it has kind of that effect. And I know running can do those things, and
Right.
physical activity. And is that
Mhm.
something you kind of steer people towards on how to, so rather than go look at porn and would be the go-to. I go and do these things.
Well, what I'm doing to get them to do first is sit with that emotional discomfort.
Oh, okay.
So for me, everything began here.
Mm-hmm.
Slow everything down. It's where it all begins. Negative event happens. Wait, before I even start to try to process it, slow down, breathe. For me, I encourage clients to do meditation. I share with them a meditation music library to use just 10 minutes a day because I want them to be able, when they get activated because something negative has happened, that immediately they can say, wait, I don't have to stay here. Even though I've been my anxiety level has escalated, I don't have to stay here. I can go back to a place where I can feel a sense of calm, because then I'll be in a better place, a better place to be able to make healthy decisions. So that's
Okay.
what I want to do first and foremost. So I want them to sit with that pain, that discomfort. I want them to learn how to process through that and to understand, most importantly, it will not kill you.
Right.
It's not going to kill you. It'll be okay. As a child, it may have killed you because you didn't know what to do with it. But we sit with the pain and you couldn't figure out a solution, more importantly. So we sit with our pain for a little while, and then we do what I call what I feel. That's your pain, what
Mm-hmm.
I feel. And again, as I continue to slow everything down, I move over to, but what is real? Because what I feel versus what is real are sometimes two very different things. So
Right.
now, instead of being guided by infantile, childish emotions, I'm now going to be guided by wise mind and rational thinking. So here now, I say, okay, what's really happening? And I sort through it, and then I do what you were saying before. The final step: make the healthy choice, the healthy decision, and that could be many things. That could be, hey, I need to go talk to somebody about something. I need to go do some exercise. Maybe I need to, take a nap. Maybe whatever it may be, that is a healthy approach versus, again, where we were before. I feel this. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to feel it. Run away. We stop being runners.
Yeah, because I think that, that's especially for guys, I think the tendency is, hey, I'm doing these things that I know I shouldn't be doing. So if I turn around and go do these other things that are better than what I could be doing, then I'm solving the problem. But I like the approach of, you need to actually sit and deal with the emotional component of that
Right.
and process that before. Otherwise, you're really just trading one thing for another,
That's
correct?
exactly right. Because again, you may think, okay, well, I'm not doing porn, okay, but I'm going to go and eat. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that may be a bigger problem. I had a client today or this week, what he traded his acting out for from a sexual standpoint, he traded it in for golf. Golf is fine. There's nothing wrong with golf. But when you become obsessed about it, and therefore you're looking to spend as much time as you can on the golf course while your wife is now being a golf widow,
Yeah.
that's not healthy. And why is he doing it? Because he even said, he goes, you know what? Just even scheduling a tea time brings me a level of excitement. Yeah, because again, he's raising his level of dopamine. And that's what we become addicted to. There's nothing wrong. Dopamine is a good neurochemical. Like you said, you take the cold plunges and it does something to invigorate you. It is
Mm-hmm.
good. But when we now become addicted to it, then that is not a good thing.
Right. Isn't that so one of the things with meth, right? With smokable meth is that it actually
Hmm.
just completely lights up the entire dopamine structure of your
Absolutely. Yep.
brain, right? So it
Right.
stimulates that.
Yeah. Even marijuana does that too.
Hmm.
Okay, marijuana. People think, oh, marijuana kind of numbs you or quiets you down. Yeah, but what it's doing, it is activating your reward system and heightening the level of dopamine that's being produced. So
Interesting.
therefore, now you get people who smoke on a regular basis, numerous times a day. Even if they go to quit, and they do quit, usually you see them pick up something else, another type of habit.
Yeah, because it's an artificial way to stimulate the dopamine production
That is
in your
absolutely correct.
in your
Right.
brain. I mean, do you find with these inner child things, is this like a prefrontal cortex kind of development situation? I mean, I don't know what the research is, but I'd be interested to know.
It is.
I'm sciencey, so I
Okay.
like that information.
The inner children are developed. My inner child model is a trauma-based model.
Okay.
Okay. That's what it is based on. If we look at all of these pain points, they come from being raised in environments that had either trauma or neglect, or maybe a combination of both. And yes, what happens is a large majority, 9 out of 10 of the men I've worked with over the last 12 years, they also are emotionally undeveloped.
Mm.
Okay. They did not get an opportunity to go through the key learning stages that we need of a child in order to be able to emotionally bond. They don't learn things such as attunement, empathy, how to regulate their mood, how to identify their mood, put words to them. They can tell you the basic emotion. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm happy, but they can't drill down to really name, what they truly feel. And they also have a very difficult time if people are trying to be emotional with them, trying to be vulnerable. They have a very difficult time, but what that does, it raises their anxiety because they just don't know what to do with these emotions. So now, when you have the inability to connect in a very healthy way with people, what you have is this void, and you don't know what it is. And so what you're doing, you're searching for ways to fill it. And
Mm-hmm.
in many cases, people will turn to addictive behaviors or substances to fill that void.
And I mean, obviously now over the last, I don't know, probably 2 decades, 25 years, the ability, because we were talking about porn addiction and sexual dysfunction or whatever we want to call it, but the availability now seems like that would just exacerbate that as a primary outlet. I don't know if there were, um, I'm assuming you've been doing this for a while. Now, have you found that there's a continuum that is moving more towards pornography as the soothing mechanism versus, and I don't even know what they would be before, whether it's
Yeah.
workaholism or alcohol and drugs and all of that. But is
Yeah,
that
well,
something that you're seeing?
definitely, porn is definitely becoming, even more and more. I don't know when you use the word popular, but the thing is that because, especially for younger kids now,
Mm-hmm.
because it's accessibility, again, a child who's 11, 12, 13 can't go buy beer.
Right.
You can find marijuana most likely. It's going to be kind of hard to have gambling, although there's some of that stuff. I remember junior high, we had some light stuff going on there.
Right.
But for the most part, porn is everywhere. And so therefore we're seeing more and more of that. Watching the numbers continue to grow, but not just for boys and for males. We're also now starting to watch that number grow for women, for girls. They are now looking at pornography in numbers that we've never seen before.
Wow. Yeah, and I had a guest on from the UK that she specializes in kind of both gender porn addiction, and she made the statement which I found very fascinating, which was that typically what's happening now is that women are involved in pornography, but with OnlyFans and some of the other influencing things, they can actually profit from their addiction. So it makes it almost even more difficult for them to address the problem because they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year
So
off of what
let's
would be an addiction.
but let me throw some cold water on that a little bit, because in many cases, some of those women don't have addictions.
Mm,
What those women have is some man behind them pushing. Yes.
Interesting.
Because what they're saying, the guy's saying, hey, look, you know what? You're just so beautiful. You're so sensuous. You know what? I don't mind sharing you with everybody. And you know what? Think about the money we can make. Behind
Yeah.
almost every woman, if you look in like the OnlyFans, there's a man behind her that's
Interesting.
driving a lot of that stuff. Yeah, do some of them have addictions? Yes, absolutely. But that's the biggest myth that we see when it comes to pornography. It's this idea that, oh, these women, they all are just, they're like nymphs and they
Hmm.
love sex and they can't get enough of it. And it plays into the fantasy that men have. Read the stories of the women who've been involved in pornography, and you
Hmm.
get a completely different picture. People who, and some who said, yeah, I want to go and do it for the money. It looks like it's easy money. And then realizing, oh, wait a second, this isn't really that easy to do. Not as
Right.
simple. But even think about that for a minute, Kevin, right? I, a woman who says, you know what, I think I'm just going to go and have sex with these strange men and women because it's an easy way to make money.
Hmm.
To me, there's got to be something else that's wrong, something else that's different. And I'll tell you why. Tell me the time you met a 12-year-old girl and you said to her, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And she told you, oh, I want to take my clothes off in front of a camera and have sex with strange men and women.
Yeah. You just didn't.
You didn't, right? You haven't met her, have you?
Mm-mm.
Now, I'll tell you this. I think those women exist. I think some of those little girls exist. But the reason they exist is because somebody or somebodies have hurt them very, very badly. And they feel nothing. They don't feel they have a lot of self-worth.
Hmm.
They feel that they are nothing more than an object and they're to be used.
Well, and they see it demonstrated for them that this is a realistic um, step for them to take, and it's not like there you have to make up this scenario in their head. They see it,
Right.
for it. It's really crazy what is just literally pushed on us as human beings. Anybody that's on social media, um, and I remember I'm 50, so when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, the only exposure to pornography at all or any of that kind of stuff would have been either finding something under the bed, going my friend's big brother or dad or
Yeah.
whatever. And now I use TikTok for business. We put some posts out there. I spend some time on there, but I started a new account for one of my products. And so I showed my wife, literally, I just started this account, and I was it has this, it's called the For You page, but basically it's
Mm-hmm.
videos that they think that you, based on your demographics, would want to see. And
Right.
within literally 10 seconds, there was, a girl. There's a trend now to where they walk by a mirror topless. And so that was one of the posts. And I'm like, I have not watched one single video to indicate to the algorithm that
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I want to see.
Right.
And so it's as if I'm a male, I'm of this age, they're going to feed me that based on the algorithm and
Right.
then see whether or not I engage with it.
Well, think
And
about me with all of the background about sex
yeah.
addiction,
Oh
pornography,
yeah.
and the stuff I get inundated with on social
God.
media is absolutely incredible. In fact, I had a woman from with Czechoslovakia who sent me a something on my where we actually get clients in. She
Mm.
found that and just told me how she's just so amazing, what a wonderful woman, and she's also bisexual, and she's not fearful of other women, and she's a great cook, and I should wind up meeting her. I went to my wife and said, "Hey, look, you got competition over here." It's like,
That
it's crazy, but this is what people are subjected to, and this is what kids are subjected to. And what are
mhm.
we doing? We're raising a generation of little boys who are thinking, hey, you know what? It's okay to objectify little girls. And little
Right.
girls who are starting to think, oh, you know what? It's okay to be objectified.
Yeah, because it's telling the little, the culture is saying that, these OnlyFans girls, for example, well, they're getting paid a ton of money and it's in their own bedroom. They're not getting hurt. They're making
Right.
this is a choice that they're making, which may or may not be true, but
Mm-hmm.
it changes the dynamic of the argument,
Yes,
right? Like if someone's
exactly.
being sex trafficked or forced into this, and as you pointed out, that's to at least a lesser degree is probably happening in a decent amount of percentage. But now it's like it changes the whole conversation for these young people,
Mm-hmm.
to say not only is it okay, but it's something that they benefit from. So I'm able to benefit from it.
Yeah. Right. That's exactly right. But again, we just saw an OnlyFans um, woman, I guess it was back in, I think it was in Florida last year, who took a knife to her boyfriend
Oh wow.
and stabbed him to death. And when they went to go arrest her, they took pictures. She was dressed in all this sexy stuff. So obviously, there was something that was going on at that moment,
Yeah.
and she just lost it. She lost it,
It
and
would
that's
be
why I said,
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
"No, go ahead."
I was going to say it'd be interesting to see the data if they've studied it, and hopefully somebody will, to see the kind of the truth behind the curtain, right, of OnlyFans and what's actually going on there.
Hmm. And I think there's a lot of horror stories there.
Yeah,
I really do.
yeah,
Just like there are in the porn world. And
right.
thinking with the porn world, we have a lot of that data now. We have the testimonies uh, from women who've been in the industry,
Hmm.
who talk about the fact of how much they're fueled with drugs, that drugs are
Right.
pushed upon them to kind of numb them out along the way. But what we're also seeing is a large increase in the violence of
Hmm.
pornography. Okay, the fact and the way it humiliates and degrade women.
Hmm.
The reason being for that, as one porn producer said, it's because it's what men want. And that's really sad.
Yeah, it is sad, and it's to your point about dopamine and stimulation. It's that from what I understand, what happens is just like with any other drug, any other thing that's stimulating dopamine production, they basically get to a point where it requires additional different stimulation in
Hmm.
order, and so that's where the more extreme stuff comes in, and because it's
Yes. We hit a
you know
level of tolerance,
right,
and it's like, it's not enough. I need more. And actually, I don't need more. I need different.
right.
I need different. How many men, I don't work with men who have, engaged with child pornography, but I bet a lot, I talked to a lot of them, and how many of them will sit there, all of them will say, with the exception of a handful, and say, never thought I'd ever look at this. It was not on
Wow.
my radar, nothing but what's usually mixed with that. And I'm not giving anybody an excuse. It's horrific, should never be done. You have to go serve your time if you get caught. But it always seemed to be combined with alcohol or drugs of some kind. So
Interesting.
therefore, they're already, now they are, they're altered, okay, and they have a mind altering substance of some kind, and now this comes across their screen, and they're like, wow, that's real different.
Yeah.
And before you know it, they're starting to download some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Again, not an excuse at all. It's horrific. People need to be punished for it, and so we have to deal with it in a very, in a way that we're going to try to hopefully maybe one day. Well, that's foolish to say. I was going to say eliminate it. We're never going to
Yeah.
eliminate it. We're not going to eliminate any of it. But
Well, right.
hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully make kids more aware, make them safe somehow.
Yeah. The safety, it's crazy what's happening right now with essentially sexual deviance and that can encompass all sorts of things, but it's becoming pushed more as a norm
Yeah.
in our society, and there's the stuff with Jeffrey Epstein and how that's been repressed, and some of the stories that don't get out, and sex trafficking, and all of this craziness that's happening that I'm just hoping that we get to a point where it starts to go the other direction because it seems to be moving in a very scary
Yeah.
direction at this
Well,
point,
unfortunately,
especially when kids are concerned. Like adults, make your own choices.
right,
But
right.
when we're talking about children, that's just scary.
Being a Christian, I look at Revelations and I say, we're moving that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming. It may not
Yeah.
happen for another 1,000 years, but we're definitely moving in that direction. And we've
Yeah.
never seen it so pervasive how things that go against the moral norms that we've tried to adhere to,
Mm-hmm.
but in the last 10 to 20 years, I mean, that has just shifted completely. It is almost like the lines have been blurred between what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah, because even if you're not a Christian or religious in any way, there's always been this innate sense of right and wrong, and kind of this, in general, a substantive moral compass in
Yeah.
people. Again, whether you're a religious person, and we'll just use religious as a word. I don't really like
Mm-hmm.
that word, but just for the sake of discussion, there was always like, yeah, these are just things that you don't do, like, and you don't hit women, you don't, as a man, you don't hit women, you don't,
Right.
engage in anything that would endanger the life of or emotional state of a child, and all
Mm-hmm.
of these things. And now the stuff that's happening is just it's just unbelievable, honestly. Like
It's like that all of those beliefs that we had, they just got out the window
yeah.
for many people, for the generations that are now coming up, and we're watching that. I mean, that's why I don't spend a lot of time on social media. I may go in to
Hmm.
do some posts, but all of a sudden you see this video pop up where it's people just beating the hell out of each other,
Yeah.
and why? For no reason. Just
Yep.
I feel like doing it.
Yeah.
I can't now. It may have happened because I'm 65. I mean, it may have happened back in the 70s and early 80s. I don't recall it. I don't
Yeah.
remember ever seeing it. But now, what I think a lot of it, there are people who are just so angry.
Yeah.
There are more people who are more angry now than I think at any time ever in our history.
Yeah, it is it's interesting, the whole Karen culture, and just people just going absolutely ape shit, for lack of a better term, just going completely crazy on each other. Yeah, it's gotten little, very, very pervasive. I'm curious. So we've got friends, we deal with some young couples from a marital kind of mentoring type thing, and I know one of the big trends now is this, what I believe it's called gentle parenting, but it's a concept in which when something happens, you sit the child down, and the challenge I've seen is that there doesn't seem to be an actual discipline necessarily involved, but it's like, well, you just threw a glass on the floor on purpose, and you're supposed to get to the root of their emotions around that.
Hmm.
Is that something like you're seeing in terms of like, as men now, my kids are older, so I'm kind of, my kids are out of the house and all that. But if there's guys that are listening that are, dads of, younger to tween to teen kids,
Hmm.
what kind of advice do you give to kind of help guide them to avoid some of the stuff that you see with these 11
Hmm.
inner childs? Like, how do, we,
I, I believe that it's very important that we do part of that, like you call gentle parenting, because I want my kids to have a voice, to feel they have a voice, that they've been heard. I want and most importantly, I want to understand, and I want them to understand, and this is how it ties into our inner child, what is the answer to the why question?
Hmm.
Why were you thinking, feeling, and doing what you did? And then after we do that, and in some cases you're not going to, depending on what the age of a child is, you're not going to be able to come up with a lot of those answers. But again, if you just go there to try to get to that point, because remember what I said to you before, one of the big problems is not being emotionally developed. We
Mm-hmm.
need to help our kid put word to emotions. We don't do a very good job with that as parents in many cases. We're just too reactive. Stop it. Leave it alone. I don't want to hear this.
Right.
Versus, wait a second. Tell me what do you think you're feeling? Okay, you're just getting upset. Oh, you're upset because you can't go. Oh, that means you're disappointed. Disappointment. Guess what? We're all disappointed. I get disappointed all the time. And you walk them through that. But also, there has to be a consequence. Okay, it
Right.
can't be just, oh, let's find out what you're feeling. Oh, okay, well, I understand. That makes sense to me. Well, try not to do it again. No, no. There has to be consequences to everything. I'm not a believer. I raised two kids. Mine are all both out of the house too. Never hit either of them
Mm-hmm.
once. Okay, didn't I have to hit them because especially as they started to get into their like 7, 8 year old. When I started talking about my emotion, you know how I feel so disrespected. I can't believe you do something that would hurt me like that. That crushes the kids. Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
and you got their attention, and so therefore that's the approach I try to use. But there would always be a consequence because without a consequence, there'll be another glass thrown on the floor intentionally.
Right. And there was a particular child, I can't remember what the name of it was, that actually kind of had that,
That spiteful and entitled child.
yeah, the entitled child. So they've
Yes,
got, whether it's the participation trophies or, always, always praising the kid with
right.
no implication, no complications or consequences. It's being a father especially is quite difficult because I think if we're all dealing with something that's um internally difficult, and we have a difficult time dealing with our own emotions, trying to teach a child how to do that is an even bigger challenge.
But see that's again, Kevin. That is when you become a father that you understand part of the responsibility. If I have to continue to grow, I have to learn how to continue to mature myself. That I could manage my emotions, that I could manage my actions, so that I can be a good role model for my kids. It's not like,
Right.
okay, fine, guess what? I got you pregnant, we have a kid, let's just let the cards fall wherever they land. No, no, that is not, as men, that is not what we're called upon to do. We're called on to be the leaders, the spiritual leaders of our home. And one of the big things they talk about, from that standpoint, do not exacerbate your children.
Right.
And that is very easy to do. And so therefore, you know what? We have to deal with our stuff before you go and approach them about their stuff
Yeah.
all the time. Because if you go there just with anger, frustration, they're going to get all the wrong messages.
Yeah.
If you go, so therefore you don't have to react just at the moment unless they're in danger or they're
Right.
being danger
Yeah.
to somebody else. You don't have to react right in the moment. It's like, let me go, settle down. What am I going to do? How am I going to say? What am I going to say? How am I going to let this play out? Then go back. Slow everything down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was just thinking one of the things I think guys and dads could tend to do is to say, well, I think this is a natural role, is that men typically take a disciplinarian role and women, and kind of leave the quote unquote feelings to the mom, right? Like
Yeah.
that's probably been something that hopefully it has changed in the last, since the 40s
I
and
don't. I
50s.
don't think
So
it's changed all that much. To tell you the truth, I think it has in some families, but and you would think with all of the self help, all of the education that's been out there for people, people still get too caught up. They're in their own head. They're
Hmm.
worried about everything else around them, and they don't slow down a moment to focus. Okay, what is it that my child needs at this moment? And this child, what that child needs, may be very different from what this child needs.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about just what they need, because what they desire, but what they need in order for them to grow. We're just running all over, and that's why I keep saying slow everything down.
Yeah, so it's important that if you're that, and no matter how old your kids are, right? Like it's important for you to, fix some of those things or begin to correct some of those things in yourself so that you can
Yeah,
actually be. I mean, even for me, my kids are 25 and 24. One of them happens actually to have some mental issues that she's dealt with, and it's still important for me to continue to grow and to be present, and help her to see my own emotions and how I deal
right.
with them, and now at this age it's cool because they can help me deal with them in the same way that I would help them when they were younger.
True, that's true. You know what's interesting when people read my book, whether it's Going Deeper, How to Get a Child Impact Your Addiction, or if it's Why Men Struggle to Love, as they read it and they realize how everything went wrong,
Hmm.
and so we go back to start to talk about it, but instead of talking immediately about themselves, they start about what happened to them. They start talking about, oh my gosh, I can't believe the way I'm messing up my kids. Because that's what they see.
Yeah.
They see it there and they say, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I go, you know what? Your kids, there's always time to make up for it. I don't
Yeah.
care what age they're at, there's time to make up. Sometimes you may have to go and say, I'm sorry for what I've done. I see the errors of my ways now. I wish it would have been different earlier. And if for the younger ones, it's just changing the paradigm and
Yeah.
doing it a different way. And they'll pick up on that. And that's where I need to go. So that's why that's one of the big, uh, I guess, bonuses of the whole inner child model is that it not only helps the person who needs that help to deal with their addictive behaviors, but it's also, again, breaking that generational curse and being able to look to their kids to make sure they, or at least increase the likelihood that they will not deal with a lot of the things that dad dealt with before.
Right, and it helps with your interpersonal relationships with your friends, especially within your marriage. Being emotionally distant with your wife is not a good thing.
No.
And do you, within the book or in your practice, do you kind of give men strategies on how to integrate some of this stuff in a marriage relationship? I mean,
Oh,
how do you typically do that?
that comes into the when we go after we do the inner child, then what we do is the emotional development. And that's with the book Why Men Struggle to Love. And in
Hmm.
that book I identified 14 what I call blind spots. And blind spots are something that inhibits a man from bonding in a healthy way with someone. Like, for example, inwardly focused. Okay, we're inwardly focused. We lack curiosity, not curiosity about things. You can be curious with sports and stock market and those kind. Curiosity about people,
Okay.
sitting and diving in to know more. Lack of contentment, not really having the sense of contentment in life at all. Having a low emotional IQ, hide and lie syndrome that I call it. We want to kind of fade into the background. We want to withdraw, or we just immediately lie about something because we have this big fear that we're in trouble. So
Mm.
again, there's the 14 blind spots, and with that, we go through them and guys identify which ones do they really struggle with. And then what I also have, because I think you have to have solutions. There's so
Hmm.
many books like the one back here that have been written where they do a wonderful job telling me the problem, but there's no damn solution to it. What the heck's that about? I don't get it. I'm
Yeah.
always waiting for that. So what I give them is antidotes for each and every blind spot. These are the 3 to 7 things you should be looking to do to soften those blind spots, because they're never going to fully go away, but
Yeah.
hopefully they can be to a place where you can manage them.
Yeah, that's yeah, I've had to deal with a ton of stuff. And my wife and I, through the years, we've been married almost 28 years, and we've probably been to counseling of one type or another. Usually like we call it kind of like changing the oil of your marriage.
Tune-ups.
Yeah, tune-ups, and probably 4, 5, 6 times.
Okay.
And so we've been able to deal with a lot of those. I grew up in a home that's addictive, mother completely absent, would disappear for days at a time, started raising myself at about 7 or 8, and then kind of moved in with my dad at a later time, and essentially poured myself into a work addiction that I maintained until my first child was about 6 months old. And I was, in my case, God just changed my heart and allowed me to kind of take some steps, and really, I changed my entire thought philosophy almost overnight, which was crazy. But I've had to deal with a lot of those things. So when you're, I don't know if it's the stress child or, probably a mixture of all 9 or now 11 of those kids probably mixed into my Heinz 57 inner child.
Right. Well, I mean, if we look at your background and what you have, so therefore there's a sense of abandonment there.
Right.
And your inner child most likely created a worldview of, I don't need anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'm better. I
Yep.
could just do it on my own. I do it by myself. I don't need you. And so therefore, with any, relationship, there's always a bit of a wall.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gap. You don't let everybody come in here. You just let them, you keep them here. Good. You can stay here. We'll be great. We'll have a wonderful time. I'll love you really well. You can't come in here though.
Yeah.
Because if I let you here, I give you great power to hurt me. And I won't do that. I had the same story. My father died when I was 5 of a heart attack. My mother had a nervous breakdown. I got sent out to relatives who I didn't even know who these people were. 5 years old. I'm with these strangers. I'm there for almost a year. I feel like, abandoned. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
abandoned. Then I'm like, oh, guess what? You're going home. I go back home. My mom had to go off to work. My 2 older sisters, they have to raise me. They don't want to raise me. I'm 6 years old. So
Right.
constantly in my room by myself. And back then, I didn't have a radio. I didn't have a TV. There were no video games. There was none of that. So I had to use my own imagination to to entertain myself along the
Right.
way. My worldview for my inner child was the people who love you will leave you. The people who love you will disappoint you. Now, I don't know that. I never had that thought. You never had the thought I just said to you.
Yeah.
Not there. Subconsciously, it's there. And that's why for me, starting at age 16, when I started dating, I became a womanizer. I couldn't just have one girlfriend. I needed more, and I never knew what the heck is this about. I didn't really even care back then. But,
Yeah.
and my friend, they gave me the label of, skirt chaser,
Yeah.
which I wore with great pride until it cost me a couple marriages. And then
Mm.
it's like, you know what? This isn't something to be really proud of. And so then after the second marriage, I went and sought help. And that's where the counselor, if you should heard my story, I mean, she picked it up right away. She goes, you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out because you have an attachment disorder.
Yeah.
You're an avoidant. You're not going to let anybody come in real close. You're going to keep them at a distance. And when you keep them at a distance, you don't fully bond. And so it makes it easy for you to be able to step out. Once I knew that, and I learned that about 28 years ago, once I learned that, changed everything. And then I met my current wife 27 years ago. I've been married now for 25, and I've been faithful the entire time. I shouldn't even have to brag about that. But
Right.
but that's what it is. And then God comes and takes a hold of me 3 years later and says, "Hey, you know what? This problem you had, you know what? You're not. We're out of corporate America. We're not doing
Yeah.
this anymore. I got something else for you." And I'm like, I don't want anything else. What are you doing? Why are you bothering me? You wanted a relationship? I gave you a relationship. What else do you want from me? Because I want more. And I fought him for a couple of years. My wife had a ball watching me do that on the sideline. And then finally I yielded, I surrendered, and the rest is history. I mean, I have a ministry that is blessed beyond any. I never thought I was going to write one book. Never mind, I have three, and I have two more coming out in the fall. I
Awesome.
mean, all of the different, speaking engagement, the television, the radio. It's like, what is this? It's him. It's him.
Yeah.
And he gets all the credit for it. And I'm just so happy that I've been able to help other people who have struggled the way I struggled in the past, that I've been able to help to save marriages
Yeah.
along the way. So,
Well, I think that's super important because it's, there's so much of, and again, there are probably several or many books on your shelf from this kind of perspective, but there's an academic pursuit of the science and understanding, but there's also like been there, done that. Don't do the stupid crap that I've done, which is kind of what my approach typically is with these younger couples. It's like, hey,
but
I see myself in you from 20 years ago. Like these are the ways that
yes,
I've adapted, the ways I've fixed myself, the ways that I've dealt with
mm,
these things and continue to deal with, those kind of
right,
things. So I think,
yeah, it brings it gives you credibility to that you've been there, done
yeah,
that, you know it, and then two, it's the idea of a level of comfort that they now have. Like, wait, you get it,
yeah,
you understand what I've been through. And even the wives, even though, I've never been betrayed, but they're like, you get it because you put somebody through it before.
right.
And I can hear from what you say, you understand and you have the remorse and the regret that was needed to be able to deal with those situations. And now, please, will you please instill this in my husband?
Yeah.
Where we go with
Fix
that.
him right now. Right. Like that's,
Fix them. Fix them.
well, I think that's amazing. I think all of this is very interesting to me. I'll need to pick up both books because my goal here is to help men to be, more than they currently are, or to be the best that they can absolutely be. And that's a whole encompassing, kind of ideal, whether it be physical fitness or emotional fitness and, marriage and family and sex and all of those things. So this is definitely right up my alley. So tell me again what the name of the books are, where we can find them, how we find you,
Okay.
reach out to you and all that.
All of my books are available exclusively on Amazon because I have an agreement with them. The first book is Removing Your Shame Label, How to Break Free from Shame and Feel God's Love. The second book is Going Deeper, How the Inner Child Impacts Your Sexual Addiction. And the third book is Why Men Struggle to Love, Learning, is it learning? Overcoming Relational Blind Spot. That's what it is. There are two new books coming out in the fall. One is Understanding the Inner Child and How It Impacts Your Addiction. That's going to be about all addictions.
Mm-hmm.
And also the thing that I've been asked to do since day one when Going Deeper came out. We're doing Going Deeper for Women. How the Inner Child Impacts Your Love and Porn Addiction.
Interesting.
So we're talking about that because that's becoming a growing problem. If people want to
Absolutely.
find me, they can reach out to me at innerchildmodel@gmail.com. Again, innerchildmodel@gmail.com. And I answer everybody. I may not answer you in an hour, but
Yeah.
I get back to everybody.
That's great. And I found you on LinkedIn, so I'll put the LinkedIn I'll put all the links and stuff in the show notes
Yeah,
as
I'm
well.
on almost every social media. I don't spend a lot of time. I don't spend a lot of time on there, so I don't usually tell people don't
Yeah,
do that because I don't get notifications. So,
right. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day and good luck with the finalizing of the books and the releases coming out in the fall.
all right. Well, thank you, Kevin. I
All right.
appreciate you having me.
Uh-huh.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.